universal basic income is an idea that's gaining a lot of momentum, and this is because at this point, really, it's the only feasible policy plan that could potentially combat poverty that will inevitably result due to job loss once automation becomes more prevalent. Now, in certain cities and certain countries, local governments are experimenting with universal basic income. And the preliminary results actually look good, at least when you look at the psychological benefits. So it looks good, but a new study is giving universal basic income even more credibility. So according to Dylan Matthews of Vox, a universal basic income could make the US economy trillions of dollars larger permanently, according to a new study by the left-leaning Roosevelt Institute. Their paper analyzes 3 different models for universal basic income. 1, a full universal basic income in which every adult gets $1,000 a month, $12,000 a year. 2, a partial basic income in which every adult gets $500 a month or $6,000 a year. And 3, a child allowance in which every child gets $250 a month or $3,000 a year. They find that enacting any of these policies by growing the federal debt, that is, without raising taxes to pay for it, would substantially grow the economy. The effect fades away within 8 years, but GDP is left permanently higher. The big $12,000 per year per adult policy, they find, would permanently grow the economy by 12.56 to 13.10%, or about $2.5 trillion come 2025. It would also, they find, increase the percentage of Americans with jobs by about 2% and expand the labor force to the tune of 4.5 to 4.7 million people. They also model the impact of the plan if it's paid for with taxes. That amounts to large-scale income redistribution, which the authors argue would stimulate the economy because lower-income people are likelier to spend their money in the near term than rich people are. Thus, they find that a full $12,000 a year per adult basic income paid for with progressive income taxes would grow the economy by about 2.62%. or $515 billion, and expand the labor force by about 1.1 million people. These are extremely contentious estimates born of controversial assumptions about the way the economy works and the effect that a basic income would have on it. Many, if not most, economic modelers would come to very different conclusions: that a basic income discourages work, that raising taxes to pay for it could have profound negative economic impacts, and that not paying for it and exploding the deficit is a recipe for fiscal and economic ruin. But the authors argue that the economic model they're using, run by the Bard College Levy Economics Institute, uses more realistic assumptions than alternative models and is particularly well suited for predicting a UBI's impact. So look, this is really great news because the results are fantastic. I mean, not only would a universal basic income grow the economy, but contrary to popular belief, it would actually expand the labor force, which is what people initially thought wouldn't happen, because with a universal basic income, there's this assumption that people would be disinclined to work, when we all know that's not true. I mean, currently we can barely get by, but I mean, if you put more money into the hands of normal, ordinary Americans, then they'll stimulate the economy because they will spend that money. But continuously giving tax breaks to the wealthy, that does nothing for the economy. You just exacerbate income and wealth inequality because rich people don't spend their money as much. I mean, after you buy a couple of mansions and a couple of yachts, what more do you spend your money on? But for normal Americans, they're constantly putting their money back into the economy. So, I mean, it's economics 101. So I'm not honestly too surprised by this study. Now, I will say this. I would like to see a non-left-leaning organization do the same study. Perhaps someone who is looking to do this as a dissertation project, replicate the same study, because I think that a more centrist even organization would give it more credibility. But nonetheless, I do trust this study, and I believe that these results will likely come to pass if UBI is implemented, because that's basically what we're seeing with localities in other countries that have already implemented it. So universal basic income is something that I think honestly is inevitable in the future, because I don't see how else we're going to combat mass poverty if we don't have universal basic income. I mean, automation is taking over whether we like it or not. We're already seeing robots taking jobs of average Americans, and we have to do something about it, and there's been no other feasible alternative. So universal basic income, I say we've got to try it, we've got to fight for it, and I'd love to see even more studies, because everything we've heard and seen from universal basic income at this point has been positive, and that's just so encouraging because I am someone who absolutely supports universal basic income. I think that governments have a responsibility to make sure that their citizens don't fall below a certain standard of living, and certainly universal basic income is one way to make that a reality.
Support this podcast by becoming a patron at patreon.com/Humanist Report.